I had just moved into an old apartment building on the edge of the city. The kind of building that seemed forgotten by time, with peeling paint on the walls, flickering hallway lights, and that constant faint smell of mildew that never really went away. The rent was cheap, and I didn't really care about the condition of the place. I just needed somewhere close to my new job. It was only me living there, and honestly, I thought the loneliness would be peaceful. On my first night, though, I noticed something strange. While unpacking, I kept hearing muffled noises through the floorboards. At first, it sounded like heavy objects being dragged, a dresser maybe, or a table scraping across the floor. I assumed it was just another tenant rearranging furniture. Nothing unusual about that. But then, around 2 a.m, the dragging stopped, replaced by the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps, heavy ones, back and forth, over and over again, like pacing. I told myself it wasn't my business. Old buildings carried sound in weird ways. Maybe it wasn't even the apartment below me. The following nights were similar. Always after midnight, sometimes closer to 3 a.m, the dragging would start again. Then the pacing. Sometimes I thought I even heard something tapping on the pipes. What made it even stranger was that I never saw the neighbor from the basement apartment, not once. I passed plenty of other residents in the halls, young couples, older folks, even a college kid or two, but never the basement tenant. That changed on my 5th night there. It was around 3:15 in the morning when I was jolted awake by a sound against my bedroom wall. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy, deliberate. My heart was pounding, but I tried to laugh it off. I figured maybe some pipes were expanding, or maybe someone next door was hammering something. But then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. The exact same rhythm, 3 times, like someone was knocking directly from the other side of the wall. On impulse, I decided to knock back. Just once, a quick tap with my knuckle. The sound echoed in my silent bedroom, and almost immediately, the knocking stopped. I waited, staring at the wall. After a minute, nothing else happened. But sleep didn't come easily after that. I remember lying awake for hours, staring into the dark, trying to convince myself it was nothing. The next morning when I left for work, I saw him. The basement neighbor. He was standing in the hallway just outside his door, as if he had been waiting for me. He was tall, maybe 6'3", with pale skin that seemed almost gray under the dim hallway light. His hair was dark, messy, and his eyes. There was something about the way he stared. Not curious, not hostile, just wrong. Like he was looking through me rather than at me. I tried to smile politely, but before I could say a word, he did something I'll never forget. He leaned slightly toward me and said in a low, raspy voice, "The walls are thin, aren't they? You can hear everything." And then he smiled. Not the kind of smile neighbors give each other. His lips stretched too wide, showing yellowed teeth, and his eyes never blinked. It didn't feel like friendliness. It felt like a warning. I muttered something awkward. I think it was just, "Yeah, I guess so," and walked past him as quickly as I could. After that encounter, things escalated. The noises at night became more frequent. I started hearing my own voice coming from below me. Conversations I had had on the phone, played back in fragments, distorted by static. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but one night I heard it clear as day. My own voice saying my name, exactly the way I had said it on a call earlier that afternoon. "Hello, it's Daniel." I froze in my bed, my skin crawling. Around the same time, I began noticing small things inside my apartment were slightly out of place. A chair pulled a few inches back from the table, a drawer not completely closed, my TV remote placed on the opposite side of the couch. I lived alone. No one else had a key. At least that's what I thought. Then came the night I heard the unmistakable sound of my front door unlocking. It was around 2:45 a.m. I had been awake, too anxious to sleep, when I heard the faint scrape of metal against metal, the click of the deadbolt. My blood turned cold. I jumped out of bed and rushed to the door, grabbing the knob just as it began to turn. I could feel someone pulling from the other side, trying to push their way in. I yelled as loud as I could and slammed my body weight against the door. The pressure on the other side stopped instantly. My hands were shaking as I dialed the police. When they arrived, they searched the building, but found nothing. No signs of forced entry. The locks were intact. But when I looked closer the next morning, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Scratches. Long, jagged marks etched into the wood of my door, right at eye level, as if someone had been clawing at it while staring through the peephole. 2 days later, I came home from work to find an envelope slid under my door. Inside were photographs. Photographs of me, sleeping in my bed, eating dinner at my table, sitting on the couch. Every picture had been taken from inside my apartment. I ran straight downstairs and demanded that the landlord open the basement apartment. The police were called again. But when we entered, the place was empty, completely abandoned. No furniture, no personal belongings. The only thing left behind was a wall, covered in dozens of small, perfectly round holes. They were drilled in a straight line, every single one pointing directly upward, toward my bedroom. The basement neighbor was never seen again. The police never figured out who he really was, or how he had gotten inside my apartment without breaking the locks. But the photographs proved he had been there, watching me, walking around while I slept. I moved out within a week. But even now, whenever I'm lying in bed in complete silence, I still hear it. Knock, 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 just 3 times. Slow, heavy, rhythmic. And every time I wonder if I really left him behind, or if he somehow followed me. I grew up in a small town where people knew one another by name. You'd see the same familiar faces at the grocery store, at the post office, even just walking your dog down the street. For the most part, it was safe, quiet, and predictable. That's why when someone new moved into the house at the very end of our street, people noticed right away. The place had been vacant for years, the yard overgrown with weeds, the windows dark. Then, almost overnight, it looked lived in again. But the man who moved in never introduced himself. He didn't wave at the neighbors, didn't stop to chat, didn't even make eye contact. The only thing I saw him do was stand on his porch in the evenings, motionless, staring down the street as though he was waiting for something. I didn't think too much of it at first. Maybe he was shy, maybe private. But soon, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. I liked to jog in the mornings before work. It was part of my routine. Every day, just as the sun was coming up, I'd put on my headphones, step outside, and make my way down the quiet street. That's when I started seeing him. The first time, I only caught a glimpse. I was halfway through my jog when I looked over my shoulder and saw a figure several yards behind me. He was walking slowly, not jogging, not even pretending to exercise, just walking at the same pace I was running, keeping the exact same distance. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was just going somewhere and happened to be walking the same direction. But then it happened again, and again. Every morning, no matter when I left, he was there, a few steps behind me, never gaining on me, never falling too far behind. I started to feel paranoid. I tried taking different routes, crossing over to other streets. But no matter which way I went, I'd eventually glance back and see him. That same tall figure, always several yards away, always watching. His face was hard to make out in the dim morning light, but I could feel his eyes on me. It wasn't casual. It wasn't coincidence. It was deliberate. After about 2 weeks of this, I decided to change things up. I went jogging at night instead of in the morning. Surely he wouldn't follow me then, I thought. Surely this would prove I was just imagining things. But I was wrong. The first night I switched, I jogged past his house and there he was, standing at the edge of his yard, half hidden behind a tree, just watching me. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't speak. He only stepped forward after I had passed, falling into step behind me, just like always. My heart was racing, not from running, but from fear. I finally decided I'd had enough. I stopped abruptly in the middle of the sidewalk, spun around, and looked directly at him. He froze. We locked eyes, standing maybe 20 feet apart. Neither of us moved. The street was silent, the only sound my own heavy breathing. After what felt like an eternity, he smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was wide, too wide, stretched across his face unnaturally. Then, without a word, he turned and walked back toward his house, disappearing into the shadows of his yard. I didn't sleep that night. A week passed without incident. I convinced myself it was over. He had made his point, whatever it was, and decided to leave me alone. But one night, just as I was about to go to sleep, I noticed something strange. My curtains weren't fully drawn, and through the narrow gap I saw movement. At first I thought it was just the wind stirring the trees, but then I saw him, standing on the sidewalk directly in front of my house, staring straight up at my bedroom window. I froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. His head tilted slightly, as though he knew I was watching. I backed away from the curtain and grabbed my phone. My hands were trembling as I called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. The street was empty. But when the officers inspected the yard, they found fresh footprints in the grass, leading straight to my window and back. After that night, I avoided looking out my window. I stopped jogging altogether. I changed my schedule, came home late, left early. I wanted nothing to do with him. But then something strange happened. His house went dark. Days passed, and there were no lights on at night, no sign of him standing on the porch. A week went by, and the yard started to look neglected again. Finally, I asked one of my neighbors about it. They told me the house was empty, as if no one had ever lived there at all. No moving truck ever showed up, no for sale sign was put up, no rental ad went out. The man just vanished. It's been years since that happened, but I still live in the same town. And sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night, I can't shake the feeling that someone is out there, watching. I'll get out of bed, peek through the curtain, and for a split second, I'll think I see him, standing in the middle of the street, smiling that same unnatural smile, and every time, I wonder if he ever really left at all. I grew up in what you'd call a picture-perfect suburban neighborhood, the kind of place with trimmed lawns, kids riding bikes after school, and neighbors who waved whenever you passed by. Nothing bad ever seemed to happen there, at least, not on the surface. My parents had lived on the street for more than 20 years, and most of the neighbors had been there just as long. Everyone knew each other. Everyone was friendly. Everyone except for Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall lived 3 houses down from us. He was in his late 50s, thin, pale, and rarely spoke. He kept to himself, rarely had visitors, and always seemed tense. He never smiled, never waved. If you tried to greet him, he'd just give you a blank stare and walk away. Most people ignored him. Some said he was just lonely, but I always felt there was something darker about him. Something unsettling I couldn't explain. My bedroom window faced the side of his house, and at night, when the neighborhood was quiet, I would sometimes hear noises coming from there. Not the normal noises of a house settling or a TV playing. These were strange sounds, heavy footsteps pacing back and forth at odd hours, low murmurs, like someone whispering to themselves. Once I swear I heard a woman crying. I told my parents about it, but they brushed it off. Probably just the TV, they said. Don't let your imagination run wild. But I knew what I heard, and every time the noises came, I'd lie awake, heart racing, staring at the shadowy outline of his house through my blinds. One night I woke up to a sound that was different from the usual. It wasn't pacing, it wasn't whispering. It was a loud, rhythmic banging, like someone slamming a door or pounding on the walls. I pulled back my curtain just slightly and looked out. His windows were glowing with a faint orange light, as if from candles or a fire. I saw shadows moving inside, fast, frantic. One of them looked like Mr. Hall. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped. The light went out. His house went completely dark. The silence that followed was so heavy, it made my ears ring. The next morning, the house looked the same as always. No broken windows, no signs of damage, just the same old, lifeless home. But something was different. I didn't see Mr. Hall outside. I didn't see him pacing by the window like I sometimes did in the evenings. Days passed and still no sign of him. No. A week later, my mom mentioned it casually at dinner. Has anyone seen Mr. Hall lately? His car hasn't moved in days. My dad shrugged it off, but I could see the worry on his face. Eventually, the police were called to do a wellness check. They knocked on the door, but no one answered. When they finally entered the house, what they found didn't make sense. I wasn't there, of course, but word spread quickly through the neighborhood. According to one of the officers, a family friend who later told my dad, the house was completely empty. Not just empty of people, empty of everything. No furniture, no clothes, no personal belongings. The closets were bare, the cabinets empty. Even the refrigerator had been cleaned out. It was like nobody had ever lived there at all. But here's the thing. His car was still in the driveway. His yard tools were still in the shed, and neighbors swore they had seen him just days before the noises stopped. There was no moving truck, no packing, no sign that he'd left willingly. He had simply vanished. The police filed a missing persons report, but nothing ever came of it. There were no leads, no relatives to contact, no one who could explain who Mr. Hall really was. It turned out no one in the neighborhood even knew his first name. We just called him Mr. Hall because that's what was listed on the mailbox when he moved in. Some people started to speculate. Maybe he had been hiding from someone. Maybe he wasn't who he said he was. Maybe he had done something terrible and ran before anyone could find out. But the thing that haunted me most was the noises I'd heard. The crying, the banging, the frantic shadows moving inside. What had been happening in that house, and where did he go? Months went by, and the house remained empty. No one moved in. No one bought it. It just sat there, dark and silent, like a scar on the street. But sometimes, late at night, I would wake up and hear it again. Footsteps, pacing back and forth inside the empty house. And when I'd look out my window, I swore I could see a shadow pass by the upstairs window, just for a second, before disappearing. I don't know what happened to Mr. Hall. I don't know if he left, if something happened to him, or if he never really left at all. All I know is that whenever I walk past that house, I feel a chill run down my spine, like someone is still in there, watching, waiting. To this day, the house has never been sold. People say it's cursed or haunted or both, and sometimes when I'm outside late at night, I'll see it, that faint orange glow flickering in the windows, just like the night he disappeared.